So I recently came across a League of Legends Reddit post about Monte Cristo's Twitter response regarding lane swaps. For those of you that have no clue who Monte Cristo is, he's a League of Legends caster that does English broadcasts for the Korean Pro League LCK, and he's also known to be a very knowledgeable analyst as well. He basically said that lane swaps aren't the real issue, and that the lack of good neutral objectives is what's really hurting the state of the competitive scene. And you know what? He is right for the most part. The design of League of Legends is just in a really bad spot right now, and it's going to take a lot more than just making a few adjustments to neutral objectives to fix all of the issues that this game actually has. I guess this is why Riot hasn't really made any major changes to these problems over the past few years, but I feel like they should take baby steps toward the right direction rather than making random changes that have actually hurt the game overall. And don't get me wrong, this iteration of League of Legends is functional and has the right ideas, but it's clear to see that either the designers are still very inexperienced or they're overly ambitious and don't know how to make their new ideas gel very well with their game design. I've been wanting to make this video since the beginning of the year, but I kind of felt like my opinion was a little too extreme, but right now I think it's a lot more important to point out at least some of the problem areas so that the proper changes can be made. First, we have to understand the genre of the game, which is a 5v5 MOBA where your main goal is to take down the enemy's nexus. And all the typical MOBA features are in this game. You have creeps that spawn in waves that provide experience to level up, and if you get the killing blow, they'll give you gold that's used to buy items to make your character stronger. There are defensive structures called turrets that help to prevent easy access to the nexus and provide your entire team gold if you destroy one. An inhibitor that, when destroyed, spawns a super creep in that lane and allows your team to target the nexus and the turrets in front of it. There's also a jungle that houses neutral creeps as well as neutral objectives that teams can fight over to take advantage of the special buffs that they offer. So Riot put in all the necessary pieces of a MOBA into their game, but the changes that they've made these past couple of years don't seem to work in any kind of coherent way. And to talk about some of these really weird changes, first we have to talk about the dragon. Last year, Riot decided to change Dragon to be a neutral objective that gives a stacking buff that progressively makes your team stronger, rather than it being a source of gold for your entire team. At first, it actually wasn't that bad of an idea. Like, sure, it had its flaws, but over time it could have been adjusted to something that fit well with their overall design. But fast forward to this year, and no significant changes were made until about a month ago. For an entire year, Riot legitimately thought this was a foolproof idea. No. First off, taking away the global gold means that towers become the most important objective in the first 20 minutes, since they're the only source of global gold on the map, and gold is the most important resource for making your character stronger. People have been saying to undo the global gold change, but I also feel like there are other things that can be done to help fix things. I feel like the buffs from each of the stacks need to either be redone or placed differently. The first stack gives 6% additional attack damage and ability power, but why is this the first stack? This is obviously meant for the carries of the team, and a huge power boost really wouldn't come until later in the game. This buff should honestly be placed at stack 3 or 4 to not only incentivize getting dragons early, but to reward teams that prioritize dragon and punish teams that don't. I would also adjust the damage percentage to be a little bit higher so that it feels like a bigger reward for doing the right thing. The next stack is what should really be the first one. Attacks on turrets deal 10 to 180 magic damage over 2 seconds. Previously, I said that towers are the most important early game objective, and if they were buffed to be a little more durable and harder to take down, it would make sense that this would be the first stack. This would give your team the pushing power needed to get the only source of global gold before the 20-minute mark, and leave no other option for the enemy team but to get their own first dragon so that they can take down your towers. But right now, towers are just really easy to rip through, so any buffs to the health or armor could make this buff a lot more relevant if this were to be the first stack. The next stack I actually really like. It gives your team an additional 5% movement speed, so it makes it easier to kite, chase, and juke, and it's in a position that makes sense, so at least one of the buffs was made and placed correctly. The current 4th stack reduces the damage taken from turrets by 20%. Ideally, I would place this at stack number 2, but I could see it being the first stack as well. Getting reduced damage from towers early means we'll get to see more confident tower dives in the early to mid game to help create or snowball an advantage because people love to sit under their tower like it's a safe haven. And what better way to crush that mentality than to have 2 people dive you, kill you, suffer no consequences unless you had backup. That would honestly make the game so much more fun to watch. The 5th stack basically just turns you into a Super Saiyan. I really don't even need to describe it, you're basically a god. There are probably different kinds of buffs that can be made to replace the current ones, but one step at a time. You don't want to make any changes that could just break the game entirely. So just to go over my personal arrangement of the stacking buffs, I would have the tower burn, the tower damage reduction, the movement speed, the damage buff, and then Super Saiyan mode. This would help to reward a team that stacks as early as possible to hit that big power boost and making the other team feel underpowered until they get to the same point. This is the kind of dynamic that the Dragon really needs because right now, it's not really that relevant until a team is about to get their 5th stack. But I think one of the reasons why it hasn't changed all that much since last year is because I think Riot was banking on their new objective called the Rift Herald. So the Rift Herald is essentially the Baron Nashor before the 20-minute mark, but the buff it provides only goes to one person and is less powerful overall. Killing this objective gives the holder 10% increased damage, 40 movement speed, and a shorter recall time that will boost your movement speed by 50% for 8 seconds once you leave the fountain. When you're around creeps, they gain 40% increased attack speed and the cannon creeps gain 100 attack range. But here are the problems that I have with this neutral objective. The creeps just lack the durability when compared to the Baron version of this buff, so it's only really useful in very specific situations where the enemy team either has no wave clear or you just have the clear advantage. And I'm not saying that the creeps should be just as strong when compared to the Baron version of the buff, but give them something, give them a little bit of durability. And if Riot were to give the creeps just a little bit more power from this buff, then it would actually be a viable pushing tool in every situation. And I assume the dynamic that they were going for was Dragon being that late game insurance policy, while Rift Herald was that early to mid game power boost to help push lanes before Baron spawns to basically fill that role. But that dynamic just doesn't work because Rift Herald doesn't have that big of an impact. Not only that, Rift Herald just does so much damage that you should really only go for it whenever it's completely free. Like, what is with this common theme whenever it comes to neutral objectives? Teams should be encouraged to fight over something that's worth having, so why make it so hard? Oh, because it would snowball the game too hard and it wouldn't be fair for the other team. If that's the case, then you have to balance the game in a way where either deaths are less punishing or there are comeback mechanics to even things out in a proper way. I like that shutting down someone with a kill streak gives global gold, but I feel like there should be more ways to come back. How about if you kill someone that has the Rift Herald buff, it grants more gold to the killer or maybe some global gold. Making a dynamic like this would put a clear target that needs to be dealt with to stop the bleeding and get back into the game. But first things first, Rift Herald and its buff need to be altered in a way that could accommodate a change like this. It needs to be an objective that can be fought over to gain an advantage with the potential to lose it rather than just something that's completely free. But the neutral objectives aren't the only flaw in the game design because the vision mechanic was completely gutted this year. To help get vision around the map, players can put down wards that help your team see a certain area on the map. There are 3 kinds of wards: a stealth ward that's invisible and lasts for a limited time and takes 3 hits to destroy, a vision ward that exposes invisible units within its sight radius and takes 5 hits but is completely visible, and the farsight ward that's placed when using the farsight trinket, which is visible, has 1 hit point, and is only targetable to the enemy. So the change that was made that kind of put people up in arms is the fact that the stealth ward is no longer purchasable and is only accessible through the item Sightstone and the free warding totem. I initially thought that the lack of vision would make things a lot more interesting because teams would have to make riskier decisions. But then as I started reading about all the new changes for the season, I saw that they made the most cost-efficient jungle item called the Tracker's Knife. This item acts like the Sightstone but only has 2 wards instead of 3. But the fact that it's the only jungler item that has wards attached to it means that it's the most viable item in the competitive scene. So if one jungler goes this item and the other doesn't and builds a Sightstone, the one with the Sightstone won't have wards out near as early and is wasting an item slot that could be used to be tankier or to increase their damage. Who thought this was an okay idea? Like, sure, it doesn't matter in solo queue, but in competitive games, 95% of the time, both junglers will run this item. They effectively made the other jungler items useless in professional games. I don't even have to say what they do because you'll only see them 5% of the time whenever you watch. I feel like the easiest way to fix this would be to give the warding mechanic to all the jungler items and then give Tracker's Knife its own alteration to the Smite Summoner spell, whether it's giving vision to somebody you smite or giving increased damage to whoever you smite. Something, like even things out. I wanted to suggest taking away the warding mechanic altogether, but I feel like it's important for junglers not to buy a Sightstone and use that item slot on something useful. There are definitely a lot more issues with League of Legends, but I feel like working around and fixing these would help alleviate all of those other issues. I mean, at least they're taking chances, but it's obvious to see that either their designers are still really inexperienced or they just don't have the right design analysts to just say no. But if they take baby steps and make the appropriate changes, they can get their game back to a state that works coherently and makes sense. Who knows, maybe I'm wrong about something or I just didn't explain everything as best as I could. And whether or not you agree with me, I hope I brought up some key points. I think I like that outro a lot better than the last one. Anyways, I hope to see y'all in the next video.